Good afternoon friends, welcome you all to the next lecture of the subject Construction Economics and Finance. Today we will be discussing the mechanism of supply and demand. Law of supply and demand. It is a law which governs the market or industry with respect to production of goods, materials and services. A major aspect of economy is that demand and supply of a product are interdependent and these are sensitive with respect to the price of the product. So, demand supply mechanism is a very important mechanism in any industry, and especially as in civil industry we have to deal with a lot of materials and different services. Understanding supply demand mechanism becomes very important. So, in general, this law is about the market or industry with respect to production of goods or materials and services extended. So, a major aspect of economy is demand and supply of a product are interdependent, that's for sure. More the demand, more the supply is a universal rule, or less the demand, lower the supply. So, again, demand and supply are characterized by the cost of the product or service which is given. So, overall demand and supply mechanism can be understood in a better way by studying the demand supply curve. Okay, a demand supply curve is a curve in which along the horizontal axis we have the quantity, along the vertical axis we have the price, we have a curve which represents supply and the other curve represents the demand. In the next slide we will be discussing this in detail. The point at which these both curves meet is termed as the equilibrium point. It is that point at which demand and supply meet each other. Okay, so that's the equilibrium point. So now let's come to the detailed aspects of demand supply curve. This is a very nice concept and a very important thing which every engineer should be aware of. Okay, so this I have drawn my hand. So as I told earlier, the vertical axis represents the price, the horizontal axis represents the quantity. One curve which starts from 0, it is your supply curve, other curve is your demand curve. So now we will see its characteristics. Then, so I have marked a point A1 which is on the demand curve. A1 is higher on the curve, so when I drop down a horizontal and on the vertical axis, we can see that the price is also on the higher side. So correspondingly, if I trace down the point on the supply curve, we will see that it lies a bit lower on the supply curve. That means when is the demand high? When the supplies are low. It is one aspect of looking at that. Second aspect is the A2 point. Now from the supply curve I am dropping it on the quantity axis. As the quantity of production is low, the supply is low. As the supply is low, the demand is high, and as the demand is high, the price is high. That can be one more conclusion which is drawn from this curve. Getting my point? Again I am repeating, A1 point I have first marked on the demand curve. Further I have represented that same point in the same line. Okay, it has to be in the same line. I have projected it on the supply curve. Now for the demand curve, I have drawn the horizontal line to project its price, whereas for the supply I have drawn the vertical line to project its quantity. So how can we conclude here? As the quantity is smaller, the supply is lesser. As the supply is less, the demand is more, and as demand is more, price is high. Now whereas I will take a point B2. Okay, I will take a point B2 on the demand curve itself, which is lower as compared to A1. Further I will project the same point above on the supply curve. Now here Similarly, we can read the curve as we have done in the previous case for A1. Here the supply is quite high, demand is low. Quantity of production is high, price is low. Okay, getting the point. So if we go with price quantity as the initial thing, price is less, quantity of production is more, hence supply is more, and as supply is more, because it is going beyond that intersection point, okay, as supply is more, demand is less. Now as an engineer, it is very important for you all to apply this into the engineering materials. Okay, I'll take one example. Recently we had scarcity of sand. Okay, recently we had scarcity of natural sand. That time what was the scenario? If we put in this demand supply curve, demand was high, right? Construction was at peak, demand was high. But what was happening with the supply? Supplies were low because government had put restrictions on mining of sand, hence supply was low. As supply was low and demand was high, prices got escalated. Okay, as prices got escalated. But in due course of time, we got something called as M sand, machine sand, which we call, and various other alternatives were developed. Okay, various other alternatives were developed or were available, which could be used instead of your river sand. So in that case, what happened? As alternatives were developed, the supply increased. As the supply increased, automatically the demand decreased, or demand was satisfied. And as demand was satisfied or supply was more, surely the prices started to come down. This is how the demand supply mechanism works, and it is very essential for an engineer to understand this. One more example I like to give. This is from Belgaum, okay, an area called as Vijayanagar, which is near Hindalga. There apartment trend started suddenly. Okay, many builders started building apartments. One of my known builder successfully completed 2 apartment projects, each apartment having one apartment with 12 flats, one apartment with 16 flats. Both were sold out. He got good response, and through the profits he gained, he purchased one more land and went for an apartment of 24 flats. Currently, out of the 24 flats or the apartment blocks, 24 blocks, 10 are sold, 2 are rented, remaining 12 are as it is. Okay, the 4th floor for which he had got the permission, he has still not finished that floor. Why? What happened? Initially when the project started, demand was high. He was able to meet the demand by producing the required number of flats, and even sometimes what happens is, as demands are high, they can charge more money also. But that became a trend. Many developers invested and purchased land in those areas and started developing apartments. So a time came where people had various options, and generally in tier 2 cities like Belgaum, people prefer to go up to 2nd floor or say 3rd floor. Beyond 3rd floor they hesitate because the lift, maintenance of the lift and those all issues come in. Secondly, if you have a flat on the top floor, there is always a issue of leakage. So with all these things coming into picture, what happened is he increased the supply. That means he built more number of flats, whereas demand had fallen down because various options were available with the people who are willing to buy, and with that scenario his product could not be sold. Okay, so what happens is, a civil engineer should have a proper knowledge of market, and he should be able to read this demand supply curve. Now in today's condition, if we see, the demand for masks is high. Why? Because people require it desperately, and as the demand is high, supplies have fallen down drastically and cost has increased rapidly. Say hand sanitizers, they are also not available. Demand is high, supply is not able to meet the demand, and prices will get escalated. Now there is another view also at looking at this. If you go for a luxurious car segment. In that case, the scenario becomes different. It is not in our industry, still I am giving you as an example. There, the demand is low, the supply is also low, but the costs are high. Okay, now in that case, why are the supplies low? Because demands are low. Why are the demands low? Because the prices are too high. Okay, it is not that they are not available or anything of that sort. Those come in luxurious products. Okay, so sometimes if you go with materials which are too costly, what can happen is you have to wait for the order because they will not be readily available with a dealer. As the demand is less, they will not stock it. Okay, so you have to go for a pre-placed order. So sometimes seasonal effects also come into picture. I'll give you all one example with related to civil. One general example, if you go for the market of sweaters or raincoats, okay, generally that market starts in June. It will be up to July, August, or say at the max up to September. But June, July is the peak market for selling of umbrellas, sweaters, and all those where rainy season starts. Sweaters and all further continue up to your spring and winter. But have you seen anyone purchasing a sweater in March month or purchasing a raincoat in March month? No. So those are seasonal. So what happens is during the season demand is high, supply is also high, and cost also are high because it is that time where they can make money. Okay, getting my point? So these are seasonal things. Now for example, if you go for painting, no one will go for painting work during rainy seasons. So that is a off season generally for painting. Okay, that time no one will go for purchasing of paints. But when we have those peak 6-7 months, the loss or say the lack of market which they had to face in the rainy season, the company compensates by increasing the cost. Okay, so there are some cases where demand is also high, supply is there, but still costs are reasonably high because their things are season dependent, okay, or time bound. So this is about demand supply curve. So all of you, I want you all to take any 5 civil engineering products, okay, and as assignment properly write the demand supply mechanism for those 5 products individually as a assignment. So factors influencing demand: income of the people, price of related goods, choice of customers. There are many factors. I have listed down 3 here which are major. Yes, higher the income, people will go for more shopping, okay, or product of or the demand of the products which are costlier increases. Price of related goods: if you have same goods of 2 different brands and all, then pricing comes into picture. Now when we go for selection of a cell phone and all, now in our case if we go for selecting of a cement, first criteria we see is the price, then we see is the quality. Okay, many times price is seen as the first criteria in many projects. Then choice of consumers. Consumers are comfortable with some products. For example, if you say Ultratech cement, okay, the client demands that in his building that cement only has to be used. That is the choice of the consumers, and choice of the consumer depends upon the performance of the product in the market, its history, how well it has done in the past. Factors influencing supply: cost of inputs. Yes, if the cost of raw material increases, of course it hurts the supplies. For example, see any ingredient of cement, okay, manufacturing of cement, say lime cost has gone up suddenly, surely it will hit the production because of availability. Okay, and then further when cement comes in the market, cost of the cement will be comparatively high. Technology. Now technology obsolescence is a very important word. Obsolescence means outdated. Okay, many times what happens is a machinery comes in and within small period of time a new machine is launched which is far more superior at the same cost compared to the existing machine, At that time, technology plays a very important role. This also happens in case of maximum of the electronic goods. Within 3-4 months, a new version or new product is launched, which is quite better than the older one. Then weather conditions. Yes, many times the supplies are affected by the weather conditions, and as a civil engineer, you should be aware of these things, because when you have to place the order, if the order comes, do you have the suitable place to store the materials? Because if it is like May end and all, where the rainy season starts, and if you have ordered for cement bags, and if they are piled outside the site on the roadside, and suddenly if it rains heavily, then there is a possibility that the product can get damaged. So these are the weather conditions which you need to take into account, which affect the supply. Then again, price of the related goods, it also influences the supply. So next is demand forecasting. It is an activity of estimating the quantity of the product or service that consumers will require. So for example, if you want to set up a civil engineering practice, you should have an idea how many number of projects are coming up in your city or the town, how many engineers are already practicing in your city. Then only you can plan to set up your own office. Or initially, option is that you can work under someone, build your contacts, establish your base first, then you go up with your own venture. So these are the things that all come under demand forecasting. Demand forecasting involves techniques including both formal as well as informal method. It requires a detailed study of the market, and common sense and having general knowledge proves to be very beneficial in these cases. Now in demand forecasting, okay, pricing is a very important concept to fix the price of the product. Now if you see, say, medical line, specialist doctors, okay, in one field there are very few specialist doctors, so of course what happens is their charges of consultancy are higher. Okay, why? The demand is more and they are less in the market, so automatically their prices will be higher, and you don't argue with a doctor generally. Okay, so that's how the things are working. Now the architects who are already well established, okay, if you want your house to be planned and designed by them, you have to pay their charges, which might be quite higher than the other practicing architects. That's what is pricing. So based on the demand, pricing can be done. Sometimes it works in a reverse way. If the demand is more, or say if you want the people to come to you, you can lower the price so that the number you get or more number of clients you can get. Okay, that's the another aspect of demand forecasting. So demand forecasting is a very important and essential part. Okay, so when to purchase the materials, okay, you have to purchase the materials when they are available at the least possible price. Okay, so that becomes a part of demand forecasting. The step involved in this are identification of the objective of the business, determining the nature of the goods, perishable, non-perishable. Generally in civil line there are very rare non-perishable goods, but some goods such as glass and all, you never get in advance and keep it and store it, because they can break easily and it will cost you a lot. Okay, so that comes under the category of nature of goods. Then you have to select a proper method of forecasting. Then reading the results is important. Okay, you do a method, you get the results, but analyzing the results will be very important. If you want to start any particular business, okay, or start up with a new thing, demand forecasting becomes the primary need. So these are the few methods. One is opinion poll, which is the survey method which can be generally carried out, in which collecting the opinions of the customers. There is a method called as Delphi method. Nominal group technique can be used, or you can go for more reliable statistical methods, trend projection methods, in which you will see how the market is trending. Regression analysis is a part. Okay, simple average method you can use for demand forecasting. Okay, so in today's class we have discussed about demand supply mechanism. We have taken different examples. I have given a small assignment also. I want you all to take any 5 civil engineering products. Okay, 5 products of civil engineering field and do demand supply analysis as an assignment, and you can write it. It will be hardly 1 or 2 pages. Okay, click a photograph and send it to me personally. Okay, so in the next class we'll carry further and try to complete this module. Hope all of you are healthy, fit and fine and taking care of yourself. Wish you a happy Mahavir Jayanti. Be safe, stay at home.